New sponsor, Street Group. Like it says there, they're working to revolutionize how people move in the UK. And if you're a developer in Northwest England, and you're passionate about Laravel, as I'm sure we all are, then they want to hear from you. This is actually really just an ad about their job offerings. So definitely, if you're in the market for a new gig, go over there, check it out. The URL is down below, streetgroup.co.uk/careers. And they have a bunch of Laravel jobs available, so check them out. And thanks to Street Group for sponsoring. Okay, now I'll bring in Marcel. Here we go. Okay, hello.
Hey.
I think we're ready.
Okay, cool.
Yes, all right. Go ahead and take it away.
All right. So let's share my screen and
you're good.
That should work.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So welcome to my talk called Understanding Laravel Broadcasting. I'm Marcel Pociot. In case you've seen this great head in the jar image, yeah, it's still the same person I just shaved my beard of. You can follow me on Twitter. I tweet mostly about PHP and Laravel related topics, and I'm the CTO, which is a fancy way of saying developer at Beyond Code. Beyond Code, we are around in the Laravel community for a couple of years already, and I've been around the community personally even longer. At Beyond Code, we create software tools and video courses for people like us and people like you, so software developers for Laravel and basically all of the tall stack. You might have heard from us with tools such as TinkOL, Windy, Invoker, as well as a lot of open source stuff such as Expose, which is free, like an ngrok alternative, such a tunneling service, which is also being used in Laravel Sail. So if you run Laravel Sail share, this is using Expose. So yeah, I'm sure you've heard about us or me. All right. So this is going to be interesting because I'm doing some live coding because I'm such an attention danger seeker. And not only that, you can follow along at laracon.beyondcode.de, where you should see these slides. As I'm talking about broadcasting, there will be some interactive examples and bits and pieces where you can participate in the talk. There's absolutely no need to. If you want to, that's fine. If you just want to relax and enjoy the slides, then that's totally cool as well. So we'll see. There are possibilities that you are going to crash my browser, but I hope that's not going to happen. We'll see. Anyway, what is broadcasting and how does it work? So when we talk about broadcasting in Laravel, we have to basically differentiate between two bigger aspects of it. And the first one is that we have a communication. I knew this was going to instantly happen. Okay, so there's a communication between the backend, so our Laravel application, and the front end. Now, with front end, this does not necessarily have to be your front end, so not necessarily your JavaScript application. And I love this. But it could also be, for example, a desktop application or something like a native iOS or Android app. So it's just the communication between your Laravel backend and a specific front end. Now, actually, I wanted to say something like, if I click the shoot button, then we get confetti, and that's not really interesting because it's JavaScript. But I mean, I guess you get the idea that this is a real-time example. So every time you click on the shoot button on laracon.beyondcode.de, we all see confetti. So everyone that is connected on this website will see the confettis, such as I do right now. Okay, so how does that work? And it stops. Okay. I was a bit confused that I might have this throughout the talk. That would be annoying, but it's good now. All right. So first of all, we have a post route called confetti. And when we click the button, we're making a post request to that route. And then we are dispatching this shoot confetti event. Now, the event itself is just a standard Laravel event. I just generated it using PHP artisan make : event. I even stripped out the constructor because it's not needed in here. But the difference is that it implements this should broadcast interface. The interface itself is always included in a default event class. So if you generate it, you have this interface in your class. It's just not added by default. So we implement it. And if we take a look at this interface, we see that it forces us to implement this one method, which is called broadcast on. And this method basically tells Laravel if the event gets dispatched and broadcast, where the event and its payload should be broadcast to. And in Laravel, this is called a channel. So in here, we could either return a single channel instance, or you could return an array of channels. I'll talk about the different kinds of channels later on. So in our shoot confetti example, we broadcast on a channel, which is called Laracon. Then, as we hit that post route, we are dispatching the event. This is just a standard event, so we can also just dispatch it with, for example, the event helper or shoot confetti : dispatch, doesn't matter. Now let's take a look inside the Laravel event dispatcher and see what happens. I stripped out like the first 4 to 5 lines of code, because in there, Laravel is taking the event object and the payload and basically merges it into one array. I just stripped that out. So there's not a lot going on before the broadcast check happens. So this is very much at the top of event dispatching. So what Laravel does is it checks if it should broadcast the provided event. And well, if it needs to broadcast it, we just do that. So let's take a look at the should broadcast method. So as I said, it gets this array instead of the event object itself. And Laravel checks 2 different things. So first of all, we check that the event object is an instance of should broadcast. So if we just dispatch a regular event that does not implement the should broadcast method, we're out. We don't need to do anything else. If we dispatch an event that implements this specific interface, Laravel is also going to check if it should be broadcast right now or at a different time. And that's what this broadcast when method is doing. So this is what the broadcast when method looks like. And it checks if on the event object a broadcast when method exists. If that's the case, Laravel is simply going to evaluate that broadcast when method and return the response or the resulting value for this. So you could return true or false. And by default, it's returning true. Now, as you've seen in the event that I generated using PHP artisan make event, we did not have this broadcast when method by default. So it's not added by default to your event object or your event class. So you can add that. This means that whenever we dispatch an event that should be broadcast, Laravel is going to broadcast it by default, which is good. But in some situations, you might want to have some more fine-grained control over when you actually want to broadcast the event. So in this case, you can implement this method and then perform any additional checks inside of this method to determine if it should be broadcast right now. All right. So we determined that the event that we are dispatching implements this interface, and it should be broadcast now. So what Laravel is doing, it pulls in this broadcast factory from the container, and then basically just tells the container, okay, here's the event, queue it up and do whatever you want to do with it. And then the different broadcast implementation takes care of doing whatever it should do with that event. These are the available broadcast drivers or broadcast implementation that Laravel ships with out of the box. So first of all, we have a log driver, which, as you might guess, it takes the event and the payload and then logs it to your configured log stack. Then we have Pusher and Ably. These are third-party services that are, basically a SaaS, both of these things. They all provide a generous free plan, so you can try this. And what they allow you to do is they use WebSockets. And then when you push the event or when you broadcast the event, they take care of distributing it over WebSockets to all connected clients, as you saw in the confetti slide. We have a null driver, which, well, it does nothing, but it can be useful, for example, on CI environments or staging where you do not want to actually broadcast anything. And last but not least, we have a Redis driver. And the Redis driver is not that much documented in the Laravel docs. It's sort of a low-level driver. It takes the event and the payload and then pushes it to the configured Redis connection. And then you can have another application basically watch your Redis and then determine whenever a broadcast event comes in, you pull it out of Redis and then perform your own kind of logic. That's where you can use the Redis driver. So in a nutshell, broadcasting is basically the ability to take an event and the event payload and then make it accessible to something else outside of your Laravel app, whether that's a log, whether that's a service like Pusher or Ably or Redis. That's like the main essence of what broadcasting is in terms of what the whole backend logic of Laravel does with it. So with that in mind, I thought it could be fun to create our own broadcasting driver during this talk. So the idea that I had was, so if we think about broadcasting, basically just means we take the event at the payload and make it accessible for something else. Well, this is kind of what we do with webhooks, right? So we could have a broadcast driver that takes the event and the payload and then sends it to a URL. So let's see how we can make this work. And I'm going to jump into PHP Storm for that. I have a light theme, so put on some sunglasses if you are afraid. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to define a custom broadcast driver. The place to do that is inside of a service provider. So we can go into our app service provider, and in the boot method, we are going to pull in the broadcast manager, which manages the whole broadcasting for Laravel. So it holds all the available broadcast drivers and then pulls them up and boots them basically to give them to Laravel whenever we need them. So what we can do is we can tell the broadcast manager, hey, we want to extend you for a new driver. So we want to extend you with a driver called webhook. And then the second argument for extend is a callable that returns the actual implementation of our broadcast driver. And so in here, we would do something like return new webhook. Now, we don't have this webhook class just yet, so let's create that first. I'm just going to throw that into my app folder. So we create a new class, call it webhook. There we go. And now, in order to know which methods we actually need to implement, we can implement a broadcaster interface that Laravel provides for us. And then let's add the method stubs. So the methods that we need to implement in order to have a functioning broadcast driver are just three things. The first one is called auth. We can skip this. This is required if you want to authenticate private or presence channels. I'll cover that in a bit. The second one would be valid authentication response, also used for authentication of channels. We're not going to cover that right now. And then we have the actual broadcast method, and this is where we want to add our logic. So this method receives an array of channels. In our use case, if we think of webhooks, this would be an array of URLs. Then we get the event that is a string containing the event class name. And we have an array containing the payload of the event. So this is the public data that you want to broadcast. So for our webhook broadcaster, what we want to do is we are going to loop over the channels using a for each, because Adam Wethen is not here to rip me apart. I can use a for each. And now in here, all we want to do now is we just basically perform a post request. So I can say as JSON, I want to post to the URL. And the data that we want to post is an array that contains our event, as well as the payload, like that. So this should be enough. Now, to actually make use of our broadcasting driver, we can head back to our service provider and now return a new webhook instance. All right, so our broadcast manager now knows that we extended with a webhook driver. The webhook driver knows what to do when we broadcast something, but our Laravel application still doesn't know about this. So if we jump back to the slides, well, it's another confetti example. This is going to be fun. All right, because I'm doing this locally while you are on the live version, so you won't see my local code changes, of course. All right, so so far, if I press shoot, we should see the confetti being pop up. And now to use the webhook driver, what we can do is we can go to our end file and then change the broadcast driver with, currently it's being used, being pusher, and use our webhook broadcast driver. All right, so the only thing missing is that we are currently broadcasting this confetti event on a channel called Laracon. Now, we don't want this, so we can go to our shoot confetti event. And instead of returning a channel called Laracon, we can return a channel with a URL. Now, we need a URL where we can actually test the payload. And for this, oh gosh, okay. For this, I'm going to use one of our Beyond Code services. It's free and open source. It's called HTTP dump. You can create your own dump, and then you get this unique URL. And you can post any data on this URL, and then you will see the payloads in here. So let's add this in here. All right. So our service provider knows about the driver. The event has a proper URL as the channel. We switched the driver in our environment file, so everything should be good, right? Now, if we go to our slides and I knew this was happening. And click shoot, I think the click event should still work. Nothing pops up. And the way this works in Laravel is looking for the broadcast driver inside of the broadcasting config array. So here we go to our broadcasting configuration file, and we have this array called connections. And this is a little bit confusing with the naming. So we have a connections array, and Laravel is now looking for a key called webhook inside of this connections array. So this is, I think actually it should be a connection. Maybe it's worth sending this as a PR, I'm not sure. So we add a new connection called webhook, and then we tell Laravel this webhook connection actually uses the webhook driver. So you could have a connection called webhook that uses the null driver, for example, if you want. All right, I think I have to go back to that page. Yeah, let's quickly refresh, that's better. Okay, so if I press shoot, we can see that, okay, you copied the URL, but this is the request that I made. Because we can see that we have the event, which is the event class, and then we have a payload, which is the data that I have from my event. So to show you, we can go to our event. Let's just change the confetti amount to 50. Yeah, I know. Click shoot again, and we have another post request, and this is 50 now. Okay, so now we have a custom driver for our broadcasting that uses webhooks. I'm quickly going to close all of this. All right, so let me just go back to my events, switch this back to Laracon, go to our end file, switch this back to pusher. So we should be ready to go again. All right, so far we have talked about how we can connect the backend with a broadcasting driver, whether that's a custom one like the webhook one, or something like a WebSocket connection. But our front end still does not know what to do with that. So we are dispatching this event, and it somehow ends up in, let's say, pusher or some self-hosted WebSocket server or a webhook URL. But our front end does not know that this event got fired and what to do with it. The easiest way to listen for these kinds of events in Laravel is by using Laravel Echo. So you can install Laravel Echo as an NPM dependency, either using NPM or Yarn, whatever you prefer. And once that's done, Laravel Echo is sort of the connecting bit between your front end and the Laravel backend. So we can connect Laravel Echo and tell it that we want to connect to Pusher, or we want to connect to Ably or a self-hosted Pusher-like service. Take a look at the different packages out there and the Laravel documentation. This is just an example for Pusher, where we provide the Pusher key and the cluster. If you're using Ably or our self-hosted Laravel WebSockets package, the documentation for this will help you set this up. But this is the part that we need to do in order for our front end to communicate with our backend or with the WebSocket connection. Once that's set up, what we can do is we can call echo.channel, and that will tell Laravel Echo that we are basically listening for all the events that happen on a specific channel. And then we can say .listen for a specific event, so for the shoot confetti event. And when we hear that, we are going to shoot our confetti. Yeah, once again, an example. So the funny thing is, this is actually using our own Laravel WebSockets package. Laravel WebSockets is a free open source package that is a Pusher replacement. So if you are using Pusher and you want to self-host the WebSocket server, you can use our package. And this allows me to look at what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm a bit afraid to see what is actually going on. And yeah, I think this was a bit too much information going on here. All right, let's go back to that once the WebSocket dashboard relaxed a bit. A lot of particles going on. Anyway, I'll show you that in a bit when the WebSocket dashboard is doing fine. So some real world usages for this is, I mean, shooting confetti is fun, especially at a Laracon where a couple thousand people smashed that button and crashed my browser, but that's probably not what you will use this broadcasting for in your Laravel applications. So as you've said, as you've seen, and as I've said, this is especially useful for real-time communications. And this is, I gave a talk about how all of this works in depth at Laracon 2 years ago. So I'm not going in too deep about the WebSocket protocol, how the handshake works and stuff like that. But in a traditional request response lifecycle, if we want to show some asynchronous data, we would need to poll the server and make requests, and then wait for the response to appear. And then we can, for example, display a notification. And then we would need to do that over and over again and ask the server, hey, do you have new messages? Hey, do you have a new message? Hey, do you have a new message, etc. I also left in this little green background just to annoy you and me. I saw that too late. Anyway, with a WebSocket connection, though, this is pretty different, because with a WebSocket connection, you have this HTTP request once, and the WebSocket connection is then just one connection that is permanently open between your browser and the WebSocket server. And this allows for much faster data transfer because we don't have to do this whole HTTP request overhead. We don't have to do any possible DNS lookups, all that sort of stuff is completely gone because it's just one long living connection. And then we can basically just send data over that connection and display it in real time. So some more demos that might crash something. I have this fun tweet wall. So you can use the Laracon hashtag. Let me just quickly start the listener for this. Okay, so it's now listening for tweets. And when you tweet something using the Laracon hashtag, @Laracon, stuff like that, it should appear in here. Awesome, cool. Whew, for a second, I thought this was once again crashing anything, but it looks to be working. All right, so like that, we have some real-time communication happening between my artisan command in this case, and then the browser that we have here. All right, cool. Let me quickly stop this again because who knows what's going to crash next. All right. So the way that this works behind the scenes is I have an artisan command, which is called tweets. And inside of this command, I'm using the Twitch streaming API, which is a package from our friends over in Belgium from Spatie. And there we are basically listening on the public stream. And whenever we hear Laravel, Laracon Online, or the Laracon hashtag, we're just going to dispatch an event, which is called heard tweet, and give it the whole tweet payload. And then in Laravel Echo, I'm just connecting to the Laracon channel and listen for this heard tweet. And then just push the tweet on an array and only keep the latest 10. So this is not doing any more memory than necessary in my browser. Yeah, like this. The other way that we can use this is for asynchronous updates. You're not seeing that button, I know, and this is probably annoying you. Only I can click this. So what's going on is, let's say that you have a shop and you are giving a user the ability to export orders. So a user clicks on export orders, and because your shop is so immensely successful, exporting orders takes 10 seconds, let's say. Now, there are multiple ways on how you can solve this. The first one, the lazy one, would be the user clicks and he has to wait 10 seconds. That can be done. A lot of people do this, but it's not really the nice way. The second approach that I also see quite a lot in the wild is you trigger something like an export, and then this gets queued up. It gets processed in the background, and then when it's done, you get an email telling you your export is ready, you can download it. But the other way that you can do this is using real-time updates. So we can trigger a slow export and then basically notify the user about the progress of the export as it is happening. And then at the end, the user can even get a notification with its URL, click on the URL and immediately download the export. So it's a lot more nicer than having to wait 10 seconds or having to wait for an email to arrive. So let's see if this works. Yeah. So I'm starting the export, and as you can see, this is now taking 10 seconds. I wanted to take a look at the WebSockets dashboard. So let's see if that works now. Cool. Here we have it. But it seems to be under heavy confetti load. There's some server activity here. Let's see. I'll give it a second. There was confetti once again, but that's from the slow export. Okay. All right. There we see it. Okay. Some of you are still on the confetti page, I see. Okay. So this is not working as expected. But anyway, we are, if I search for progress, we should see them. Yeah, real time is fun. It's updating in real time. Okay, I think you just have to trust me. This is coming in. Let's close this. I think I can show you in the network tab. Maybe that works better. So if we take a look at the connections. Isn't this cool? I'll just carry on. Seems like you're enjoying confetti shooting too much. Okay, so the way this works behind the scenes is we make a post request to export, and then we dispatch this slow export job, which basically just does a for loop. So for 1 to 10, we sleep for 1 second, and with every incrementation, we dispatch this export progress job. And then this job basically just gets broadcast to the front end, and the front end can pick this up. All right, let's talk about channels. So far we have looked at public channels only. And public channels basically just allow everyone to go to that channel, listen in, and then just receive whatever gets broadcast on such a channel. Now, with the case of this export, this is not really what we want to do, right? Because we don't want anyone to go to our website and then listen for an export event and eventually even get the URL to download this export. So for this, we can make use of private channels. In the backend, this works just the same as a public channel. So we can just swap out channel with private channel. And this will tell Laravel that we want to broadcast our event to a private channel. Also note that you can name private and public channels exactly the same. So it's not different. Internally, these channels will get prefixed. So you have something like private-Laracon and presence-Laracon at the end of the day. Now, in Laravel Echo, to make use of this, the implementation looks a little bit different. So instead of calling echo.channel, we call echo.private and then give it the name of the channel. And then we can listen for any event as we would do this with the regular public channels as well. So let's take a look at how we can implement private channels. I made this example here where we have an input field where it can enter the amount of particles for the confetti. And when I click shoot, I want, well, to shoot this confetti to this private channel. Now, because I know that you love confetti and you love crashing my browser, I want this to be on a private channel, because otherwise you would enter like 9,999,999, whatever, and my browser would crash. So we're going to use a private channel for this. If we take a look at the implementation in my JavaScript file, you can see that this already is in place. So I already have a echo.private call using the Laracon channel. We listen for a shoot more confetti event. And when we get that event, we are going to call this confetti method with the given particle count. So that's already in place. And if we take a look at the shoot more confetti event, we can also see that this is already using the private channel. So why isn't this working? Now, if we take a look at the HTTP requests, specifically the XHR requests, we can see that there are 2 authentication requests that are failing. And these authentication requests, this has the confetti class, damn it. So these are failing, and these are failing because we cannot authenticate with the server. So to make this work, we have to go to our provider's broadcast service provider. And this broadcast service provider takes care of registering these authentication routes. And besides that, it also includes this routes channels.php file that we're going to take a look at in a second. So with every new Laravel installation, you will have this broadcast service provider there. But it's disabled by default because even though you have events, you might not need broadcasting in every Laravel application. So you have to enable it. If we enable the broadcast service provider, this file will now be loaded. We have our routes in place. So if I go back to Chrome and refresh, we can see that this is still throwing an error, but now we are no longer getting a 404, but instead we get this error 403, which means we are not allowed to authenticate with the given private channel. And just to clarify, I have two of these calls because I already have the logic for the presence channel in place, which is also failing. So in order to authenticate against one of those private channels, we have to take advantage of this routes channels.php file. So if we go in here, we can define, as we would do with regular routes, we can define the channels and define the logic on how we want to authenticate users for a given channel. So we can do broadcast channel, then we give it the name of the channel. So in my case, Laracon. And then you have a callable with the authenticated user. And in here, you can perform your own check to determine if the given user is allowed to join a channel. Now, if we would do something like the export channel, and we want to broadcast information that is only visible for one specific user, then how do you know how to do that? So we can add like placeholders inside of the channel name as well. So we could do something like user ID, and then we would get this parameter as the second argument for our callable. Okay, so in our case, we're just going to return true. So any authenticated user is able to join this private channel. So refresh, and now both of these routes return a 200 OK. And I'm still a bit afraid to go back here. Oh, it crashed. All right, so we're now connected. This works. And I mean, it's hard to show you now because if I shoot like 500 particles, this is just going to be 500 more than already are there in place. But as you can see, we have this XHR request. And if we take a look at the WebSocket connection, should see the messages. Why don't they appear? Let's open up DevTools again. This was an excellent idea to do. Let's see. Okay. To be honest, I have no idea how I can make this appear. Usually it should show me the amount of requests. I have the feeling that it's hidden somewhere because of the resolution or something. I'm not sure. Okay, so, well, you just have to believe me that there would be more confetti in this case. Damn. All right. Let's refresh. Next up, we have a presence channel. Okay, cool. A presence channel works in a similar way as a private channel. So the difference between a presence channel and a private channel is that with a private channel, even though you need to specify the user that can join such a private channel, you have no idea about who is actually inside of this channel. That's where we can make use of presence channels. So presence channels know about the users that are authenticated and connected to this specific channel. So the difference is instead of calling echo.private, you call echo.join. So you actually join the channel, and then it gives you access to these sort of 3 event hooks. So when we join a channel, we get access to the users that are currently on this website. So this is an array of users, and then we can show them. We have another event hook when someone is joining. So for example, if you think of something like Google Docs, where when someone new joins and opens up a document, then this little avatar bubble pops up. this would be the joining event. So in this case, we can take the user, add it to our front end. So we show others that a user just joined. And likewise, we have this leaving event that receives information about the user when they leave and close the browser or quit, for example, an application, stuff like that. The backend implementation itself looks like this. So we have a presence channel instead of a private channel. That's all we need to do in Laravel. And let's take a look at the implementation for this. So in here, we can see that we have one connected user. And if I take a look at the implementation in my JavaScript file, we can see that this is what we're doing. So when we join the Laracon channel, I get all the users and store them in an Alpine store. So I just store the user count. When someone new is joining our channel, we increment the count and show a latest message that says something like hello and then the name of the user. And when someone is leaving, we are decreasing the user count and the latest message says something like goodbye. Now, as you saw, the user count is already 1 because this is already in place and our channel is already authenticated in here. But we don't have any user information right now. So if we take a look at the requests, refresh, okay, then we can see these 2 authentication requests that we added successfully using this channels PHP file. And if we take a look at the response of the first one for the private channel, we can see that what we get back from Laravel is an authentication. This is the second one. Okay, is we get an authentication token. So this token is then being sent to, for example, Pusher or Ably or Laravel WebSockets. And then the server takes care of authenticating with that token once again. For a presence channel, we not only send the authentication token, but we also send along some channel data. So this is the data that you receive in this here joining and leaving calls. And as we are currently just returning true, this is only true. And if instead we would return an array in here, and let's say we provide a name of the user, save this, refresh. Now let's see, it should be one of those. There it is. So now we see that the channel data contains our user name. Okay, so this is still one connected user, but if I now open this up in a second window, it's still 1 because I'm still logged in. I need to open up an incognito window. And now you can see that on the browser window where I am logged in, we have a user count of 1. And on the second window where I'm not logged in, we have a user count of 0. And that's because on the second screen or on this browser window, the user is unable to authenticate because our authentication callback in this channels PHP file doesn't work because we don't have a user in this case. So if I go, there's my video in the way. So if I go here and log in and just use a test email, we can see that as soon as I logged in and got redirected back to this page, the user count increased to 2. And I got this, this welcome message saying, hello, whatever. All right, so that's how presence channels work. Whew, okay. So that was like the whole big chunk of the communication between the backend and the front end. And that's where Laravel has to do some work. But we can also have a communication between one front end and the other. So if you think of something like at a conference like Laracon, where once we had a Slack channel and was just like multiple people typing, if you send this typing information, if we would send it to our Laravel application and then dispatch an event, this gets sent to a WebSocket server, and from there it would be broadcast to all connected users. While this would work, it doesn't provide any benefit, instead of just making things slower. So we don't actually, for something like a typing notification, we don't need to go from the front end to our back end, because this is just an event that happens for one client and all the other clients. And the way that this is called is it's a client event. That's also what it's called in the pusher documentation and in our package documentation for Laravel WebSockets. In Laravel Echo, this is called whispering. So we would, if we want to send out a typing event, we would do something like echo.private. So we join a private channel or a presence channel. Client events only work on authenticated channels. And then we would do something like whisper. We give it the name of the event, which would be typing, and then an object. So this is missing name : I just saw that. So it would be the object with the payload that we want to broadcast. And as I said, this is now basically skipping the part of going from the browser to my Laravel application, but it goes directly to every other connected clients, or that's at least what the WebSocket server or pusher or Ably is taking care of. On the other hand, if you want to listen for such an event, you can call this listen for whisper method, which gets the event name, so typing in this case. And then you can do a log of typing, show a notification, whatever you want to do with this kind of client event. All right, that's all that I have for the topic. If you want to dig a bit deeper and take a look at what you can do with this, take a look at the official Laravel documentation regarding broadcasting. It has a lot of information. And if you want, check out our open source Laravel WebSockets package. It's been out for quite a long time now. Version 2 is coming very soon. And version 2 will bring horizontal scaling, which I'm very excited about. So this is going to be really cool. All right, so that's all that I have. Feel free to crash my browser now. And yeah, be sure to check out the digital swag section, because we at Beyond Code are sponsoring, and we're giving away a copy of Tint for free. So be sure to check that out. Thank you.
All righty. Good job, sir. Nice
Thank
work.
you.
I think I like the interaction there. I think that worked out.
Yeah. As far as my browser could work with it, yeah.
Maybe over, distracting.
Yeah, a couple thousand people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Next year you'll run out on Octane and it'll be fun.
Right.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right.